Hey there, and welcome to the Dynamics Hot Dish Podcast, serving up stories and knowledge on Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. This is what's hot in Dynamics. You're now joining your hosts, Ashley Steiner and Merlin Schweiger. Hi, Ashley.
Hey,
Just the other week, I went to Dynamics Con Live.
How was it?
It was pretty fun. So for anyone who listened to our episode a few weeks ago about Dynamics Con Live in advance of it happening, you already know that it was happening in San Antonio, Texas, and it was a couple days long. And I had a great time there. I went with a few sort of purposes. One purpose was to try to get more listeners for Dynamics Hot Dish, this great podcast that I know of. Which, if you're listening and you haven't subscribed or clicked the like button, please do that. So I was trying to get more listeners for the podcast, and I also managed to learn some things along the way, which is always a pleasant surprise. I love that, and I got to network and socialize with people. The venue was really fascinating. It was like kind of this like sprawling sort of resort thing, and it had like, I don't know, they had their own little lazy river, like, in the backyard, and a bunch of, like, I don't know, it was like this big sort of enclosed area. Did you go in the lazy river?
Did you, like, take time to relax? No, that's too bad.
No, I didn't go in the lazy river. I thought about it, but then I attended sessions instead.
Oh, you were responsible.
I know, isn't it terrible? There were a lot of MVPs there. Okay. Like 20 or 25 of them. Like, there were a lot. And I know this because at one point there was a meeting that was like in the big like lunchroom area basically, and they dragged a couple of tables together and they had all these MVPs sitting around this table talking to Molly and Liz from Doug in like, sort of a feedback session, like what can Doug do, like how can we help support you guys, etc. And I was like, man, that's a lot of MVPs at that table.
That's great. And across all products, I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, there were like the Business Central folks, the CE folks, I don't even know which other, I don't know half of the MVPs, so I don't know which product lines they're in.
I don't even know all the MVPs on the CE side, so like the PowerApps, so.
I know, neither do I. Yeah. But yeah, it was really cool. There was a lot of good content. I helped to moderate a panel one day because they had all these people who'd done CE sessions up there for their little like Q&A panel, and Heidi asked me to moderate because she's friendly like that, and so I got to stand up there and pretend like I was part of the panel.
You got to stand up and get some spotlight. That's awesome. Hopefully you were wearing your Hot Dish shirt that day.
I was wearing my Hot Dish shirt that day.
Yes, it's a good coincidence.
I know it was really good. But yeah, it was, I don't know, like the thing that I like the most about this conference is that it doesn't feel huge. Mm-hmm. Like I've always enjoyed going to Summit. Like, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Summit, but Summit feels big, it's always in like a big venue and you've got thousands of people there. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those like giant sorts of events where like you do still run into the people that you know, but there are also just like thousands of people that you've never met and probably never will meet. And I feel like the Dynamics Con Live event, I mean, it was, I think, fewer than 400 attendees. It was like 380 or something like that. But so, like, it feels more like a community and less like an expo.
Gotcha.
And I don't know, I kind of appreciate that about it.
Well, I know their plan is to grow, right? I just hope that they find a way to keep that sense of like, because I remember my first summit was in 2012, so 10 years ago.
Whew, that's a long time.
It was in Seattle. It was crazy. So my first like work conference, that was 10 years ago. And it didn't, so they still had like breakouts, right? Like not all the CE people were in the same room the whole day. But there were only like 4 sessions to pick from at each time, and so you did see the same people over and over, and you know what I mean, and could get on a path, and you could tell like I attended a lot of the marketing sessions because I worked in marketing at the time, and I saw the same people, and so there was this close-knit feel. Again, it was in a conference center, but the Seattle Conference Center is a lot smaller than like Phoenix. You know, that Summit's been to Orlando, Houston, things like that.
Yeah.
Houston was ginormous. And so you know what I mean? So it was, I hope that as Doug grows, they can continue, you know, the conference, I shouldn't say Doug is huge, but the Dynamics Come Live grows. They can still maintain that like closeness that like I felt 10 years ago. And I was new and I still felt that like community type feel. One of the things, and again, I'm going to Summit. This is my 11th Summit this year. And, makes me feel really old when I say things like that, when like things start getting into the double digits. Cool. And so I, you know, I really appreciate someone. I'm part of the programming committee. I promote it. You know what I mean? I fight for people to speak. I think it's a great conference, and I totally lost my train of thought where I was going with this, but you don't have that sense of like closeness, right? Like you miss people, it's very different. And it's more, where I was going with that is 60% of the people every year are new attendees. And I would say, so having worked at DCI and then also being part of the programming committees, I guess, I don't know if I'm allowed to share that. Hopefully they don't care. 60% of the attendees are new every year, first time attendees. So a lot of those same people aren't coming back year after year. And I hope that that's something Doug can do with Dynamics Come Live, where of course you want new people coming in, but you also want people coming back. Because that's how you grow that sense of community, is that if you grow with these same people year after year. Like when I was starting out 10 years ago, Ed Gonzalez, somebody we both know, was getting into the community space at the same time. We ended up going to Sasha, you know, every conference together, you know what I mean? So like, because we kept going year after year, it grew, you know, we have this sense of like, we're friends, right? Just like you and I, you know what I mean? Like we've become friends over the years, but there's like this group of people with us that like, we've gone to these conferences year after year, and you'd bounce things off of them. So I hope Doug is able to keep that, I guess is kind of my point there. And it sounded like Liz, when we talked to Liz a few weeks ago, that is the goal, but I'm sure it's hard to execute.
No
no
doubt.
offense, but
No
Summit
doubt.
wasn't able to do it. So.
No, that's true. And I think my impression is that what Doug is trying to do to overcome some of that is focus on feedback from the community, right? So like they have the community vote on the sessions for virtual Dynamics Con. They have like community like input and feedback, and they're listening to partners, they're listening to MVPs, they're listening to end users. Like they're actively trying to solicit feedback from every single sort of like category of people that come to any of their events or participate with them in any way, to like tell us what you need, tell us what we can do better, tell us how we can help support you. And I hope that works for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that based on the leadership team at Doug and having worked with them at previous employers, I think that we all learned a lot of lessons. And so I know that I put a lot of faith and trust in them. Again, this is not a bashing Summit thing or bashing DC. Like, I think that every conference has its place, right? And it has a purpose. And Summit is great. Like I said, I have 3 sessions. Please come to Summit. If you're not going to Summit, please come see me speak. It's a great conference, but I think conferences serve different purposes, and Summit has lost some of that community feel. It has. It just didn't grow keeping community in mind, and so I hope Doug replaces that. But there's all sorts of conferences. I mean, there's Power Platform Conference is actually right in between Dynamics Come Live and Summit. At the time that we post this, it'll have been like a week since it ended. You know, so I think every conference kind of has its own place and purpose, and you just need to find what you need the most out of a conference and attend it for that reason. I was sad I missed Dynamics Con Live. I really wanted to go. One, because I'd never been to San Antonio, and people say it's the best city in Texas. I don't know if you've been to, well, now you've been to Houston, I know for sure last year. You've now been to San Antonio.
I wasn't particularly impressed with Houston.
Yeah, no, Houston's like the armpit of Texas.
For all of our Houston listeners, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Chad.
Yeah. I don't know.
Did
I
you
didn't
like
get to
San
see much of San Antonio. Like
Okay. You
the
didn't go to
conference was
the
like
Alamo?
out
Isn't
in
that
the
in San
middle of
Antonio?
nowhere.
The River Walk? You
Alamo's
didn't do
there,
any
the
of that.
Riverwalk. No, there was like one like vendor party that was happening downtown, but it's like 25 minutes from the resort, and I have to like
Oh.
Uber in and then Uber back.
So all
and
of that was not near where you were. So it would have been
No.
like difficult. Like in Anaheim,
Yeah.
we were right next to Disney. So I walked over to downtown Disney because it was like a 10-minute walk. It was not
Right.
easy. Okay.
No,
But it sounds like it
No.
was a great resort. Like a good location.
Yeah, no, it was a cool resort. It was just like 20 minutes out of town. So
Okay.
I was too lazy to go to the party downtown, and mostly it's because I thought to myself, if I go to the party downtown, then I'm going to stay at the party downtown until it closes down, and I'm going to follow the group to wherever the next party is, and I'm going to follow whatever's left of that group to wherever the next party is, and then I'm going to be really tired on Friday. So
That's
I
kind of how it
decided
goes at conferences. Like that's the
I made the grown-up decision not to go, for better or worse.
You guys are here for it. Merlin's growing up.
I know. It's a sad state of affairs. Should we get to our actual topic?
Oh, I did want to say one more thing. I would say my favorite part of not being at Dynamics Come Live was getting your like real-time texts of like what was going on. I felt so included, even though not being there. I appreciate that. I'll do that at Summit since I'll return the
Thank
favor.
you.
Yeah, you're
Thank you. I
welcome.
appreciate that.
Yeah, so our real topic. Did you
Yeah,
want to
our real
introduce it?
topic.
And
Sure. So I think we did a session about Canvas versus model apps some time ago. I can't remember
I
when.
think it was spring, April.
Yeah, that seems about right. But we didn't take the opposite side of the coin, which is what we're going to talk about today, which is like in general, I think if I'm making a Power App, I lean towards model-driven apps because, I mean, it's the CRM that I grew up with, So of course I'm going to lean towards model-driven apps. But there are just some things that you can't do there that aren't easy there that model-driven apps kind of falls down on its face. And so today we wanted to talk maybe about where model-driven apps are not the best choice, and you might need to do a Canvas app.
I'm like you. I live and die in model-driven apps because it's CRM, right? And majority of the time, what I'm trying to do does not. So I look at it this way: if you need external data, you can't do that in model-driven apps. So right there, if you are pulling in, well, I know what you're going to say. So as of today, when we're recording this podcast, you cannot have external data in a model-driven app. Now, if you're listening to this a month from now, that might change.
I mean, you do still have virtual tables, which
You do.
Which
are not great.
I mean,
they also are getting an uplift in this wave coming.
Yeah.
But I would say that's kind of my general rule, right? Like if I'm pulling data from multiple sources, a Canvas app is just an easier place to build that. Now I say easier with like some real big quotes around it because I can't build a Canvas app on my own. I don't have the technical. I know it's low code, but any code, in my opinion, is still code. So I can't. So yeah. So I can't build a Canvas app on my own. So at all costs, I try to do everything in a model-driven app, but it's not always the best solution.
It's true, and for anyone who's listening who thinks to themselves, well, if Ashley can't, then I can't either, then I will say...
That's not true.
You can, you could.
I can't by
Ashley
choice.
Ashley could too, she's just choosing not to actually learn it, so...
Same with Power
Canvas
Automate. I'm
apps-
sure if I sat down in a room for a week, I could learn Power Automate.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some things in there that can be really annoying too, but yes, it just takes a little bit of effort and learning. Canvas apps aren't that bad. Like, okay, you gotta script, like navigate here and submit the form there and whatever, but like after you learn those basics, you'd be building Canvas apps left and right. It'd be no problem. But
So I will say the one time I have used, sorry, Marilyn, I cut you off. You go.
go ahead. No, you
Well, I was gonna
finish
say
your
the one
thought.
time I did use a Canvas app, it was using all data in Dynamics, but we couldn't link the data and have it do what we wanted it to do in a model-driven app. So we wanted somebody to be able to view something, create a comment on it, and take some sort of like action after that. And just the way that the model-driven apps are pretty rigid. They are rigid. You know, there's very little that you can do to customize how they look. You would need code anyways, so you may as well use the Canvas app. So the one time that I use a Canvas app, only using Dynamics data, I think it's still relevant because
Yes.
you just couldn't connect the things that you needed to. And the look and feel of a Canvas app, you can make it whatever you want. It looks really pretty.
Yeah,
So,
you do what you want. You want to make it look cool? Make it look cool. You want to make it look stupid and like it's out of the box? Well, then don't change anything, and that's fine. I think some of the key things that I think about in thinking when a model-driven app is not the right answer, you do have to go Canvas. You've already mentioned some, like if you want to change how it looks, or if you want to change how things are presented. Even if that is, to your point, if that's data versus data, but you can't quite show it or model it the way that you want to, or the way that's going to make sense to the users or save them a bunch of time, it's a lot easier to put it in Canvas app. And it's like, as somebody who's been solutioning in this space for more than your 10 years from that conference, we used to have to build a custom page to do that. Like back in the day, it was, okay, well, I guess we'll have to build an ASPX page and embed it in here. And then after that, it was like, well, I guess we'll build an HTML5 page and embed it in here. And now it's like, well, actually, we can just build a Canvas app for that and then embed it in here, and it'll do everything that you need it to do. And so that's been, for somebody like myself, who is also not a developer, but not quite as afraid as Ashley of like a little bit of scripting. That gives me a lot of flexibility to build stuff all on my own without having to like call somebody who actually knows how to write code.
Right. No, I agree with you on that. It does take away the custom coding part and the scariness of like, okay, is this next upgrade going to break this? And then we have to rebuild it. So I agree.
Yeah. And I also like the extra data sources. That's also a good point, especially if you want to like interact directly with those data sources. Although I as sort of a caveat, I've been learning recently a lot more about virtual tables, formerly known as virtual entities. And as long as your OData source supports CRUD operations, you can actually do CRUD operations on your virtual table. So you can create new records and you can edit records as though it is native Dynamics data sitting in Dataverse through your virtual table, if the OData source allows it. I didn't realize that before either, but yeah, you've got, it gives you some more flexibility.
It does.
But the caveat there is now you have to have an OData, in most cases, you probably have to have like a dedicated OData service that is hosting the API that's letting you interact with that data instead of just like, picking one of the connectors out of the PowerApps connector list and being like, I'll just talk straight to SharePoint, or I'll talk straight to this or that or whatever. So that does also give you some added benefits if you've got multiple data sources.
Which most people do.
What I feel like is often the case is when you're building out a model-driven app, whether it's Dynamics sales service or it's a model-driven app from scratch, you're probably going to run into something where you're like, gosh, I just wish that I could see this here and I could just click this button and it would just like do all this magic for me. And that's a perfect time to, instead of trying to like shoehorn some weird process in there or make your users click through 5 links to do something, like just build a little Canvas app, embed it over there on the side of your form, let them do what they need to do, and then when they click the button, then you run a flow in the background that takes care of whatever it needs to take care of. Easy, done.
And I think that's my hardest part of understanding like when to use a Canvas app. And I'll be honest with that, right? Like, so because I come from the CRM background of just make it work, right? The queen of workarounds. Just do something to shoehorn it in there. I think that's the term you just used.
Do you
So
know what
I
a
think that
shoehorn is, or
yes, it
or are you
helps
too
me.
young for that?
I know what it is. I am younger than you, Merlin, but I'm not, I'm not a Zoomer.
I understand.
So I guess for me, it's like having that creativeness to say, okay, actually, instead of taking these like steps that would make it work, but not necessarily as ideal, I lack the creativeness to see that this is where a Canvas app could actually solve an issue. And that's where somebody like you or a developer, solution architect, something like that can come in and help bridge that gap, to be more creative. I'm getting better at noticing it, but it's just not native, right? I'm a CE person, so.
Yeah. Well, I think not to digress down a rabbit hole, but I feel like this ties into something that we, as historically CRM consultants and CRM administrators, don't necessarily think about is the user experience for the person who is not a Dynamics professional, right? Like, oh, well, it's easy because you just follow the relationship link and click here and click there and you're done. Like, what's the problem? That's easy. But for a user who does not have a decade plus of experience on this platform, they're like, it seems like a lot of clicks. Like, either I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to get lost, or I need a bunch of training. And so if we can make it easier, if we can remove ourselves from the, yes, I understand what Power Platform is capable of, and try to put ourselves in the chair of somebody who's like, all right, I've just started this job. I've sat down in my chair in front of this computer, and somebody sent me a link to this application. What am I supposed to do with it? Like, if we can try to put ourselves in that mindset and be like, oh, actually, our workaround might be a little bit more complicated. Is there a way we can make it easier for them so that they don't have to like read a manual or watch 16 training videos to be like, oh, now I understand how to use this application?
Right. Well, and I think so CRM, right? It stands for Customer Relationship Management, right? And that's what I always tell people, like, oh, this is here to show you how things are related to each other. But you get like 5 relationships deep and you've lost people. Like, oh, you want to see how this is? You click here, you click on the contact, and then you click on their position, and then you click, and it takes you to a new screen every time. You lose people. So that's a good point. I understand it because this is what I do for a living. But to your point, salespeople, customer service, reps, they're not going to sit there and try to figure out the hierarchy of how things fit together. So if you can just display it all together in one place in Canvas app, why wouldn't you?
Now, I guess I will say model-driven apps are also getting better at this too. Like the forms on forms functionality where I can like, oh, I'll just drop my contact form from my primary contact onto my account form or vice versa. Like, it gives us a lot more flexibility than we used to have at presenting different table types of data on one screen. But it's still like, it's just one-to-one there. Like, I can't have like 16 forms on there, and I can't write data back to like 4 different places because logically from a data perspective, that's where the data belongs. But from the user perspective, they're only going to want to put it in a one little spot. And so, some of those nuances can be worked around very well with a Canvas app.
But it could also eliminate what people don't need to see. And I know that like in a model-driven app, you can only put, like, okay, they only need accounts, contacts, and opportunities, right? It's a salesperson, super low-key, that's all they need. But there's still going to be noise, or you have to build you have to build a custom form for them, and you have to build custom, you still have to do that custom stuff. Where in a Canvas app, you just put exactly what they need into it, and then, not even access it through Dynamics. They could just access the Canvas app directly.
Yep. Well, and it's a different sort of, to your point, it's a different sort of design mentality, right? Like from the model app, oftentimes it's, I have all of this functionality, I need to take away what they don't need. And from the Canvas app side, you're like, well, there's a blank canvas. I will add only the functionality that they need. And so you can kind of decide like, which one's less work? Is it less work to build from scratch, or is it less work to just like take away stuff that they don't need?
Right. But also, what's the better experience, right? Is it worth teaching
Yeah.
somebody how to use Dynamics if they're going to use it for so little? Because it is a complex system. Or only make a Canvas app super pretty, make it look like a mobile app, have it available on the iPad, and you don't have to do any training because it looks like every other application that they've used before.
Right. Which actually, man, Ashley, I've just thought of a great app idea. We should build a Canvas app for salespeople that is like Tinder for leads, and you just swipe them left or right if you like the lead and you want to contact them.
Here's the problem with that. Where are you getting the leads from, Marilyn?
I don't know. Marketing, I'm sure, is providing them.
I was like, that's the thing that always comes up is where are the leads? Where do the leads come from?
Awesome. Talk to marketing. Buy a list. I have no idea.
Don't buy a list. Awesome.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts? Like any, pointers or ideas for people as they're contemplating which one to use and when?
I don't think so. I feel like we've covered most of the basics, right? Like user experience. You can embed them in model apps. To your point, you can just build a Canvas app just all out on its own, and they never have to look at a model app. Because sometimes model-driven apps are too much or not enough, and it's pretty relatively easy to fill those gaps with a Canvas app if you're
Absolutely.
willing to learn the basic scripting that you need.
So for those of you just listening, I think that's the third time I've rolled my eyes at Merlin, making the innuendo that I don't want to learn. So thanks, Merlin, for that.
No problem. I just don't want you to sell yourself short, Ashley. I know you could do it if you actually wanted to.
Right. I just haven't had the need yet.
I understand.
Awesome. Well, I would love to hear, in the comments, if you guys want to share, the cool things that you've done with Canvas apps. I think that always sparks, really interesting conversation or, gives other people an example of what you've done. Would love to hear what people have put together and why they use a Canvas app versus a model-driven app. So I don't know, Merlin. I think that's pretty cool to hear what other people have done.
Honestly, there have been so many times when somebody said, oh, I built a Canvas app and this is what it does. And I've been like, I never would have thought to do that. And that's awesome.
Yeah, so, I'm going to steal that idea.
Exactly. I will definitely recommend that to somebody in the future.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. And hope to see you guys at Summit.
Thank you for listening to the Dynamics Hot Dish podcast. For additional content and previous episodes, check out our website at dynamicshotdish.com, follow us on Twitter at dynamicshotdish, and subscribe to our podcast for notifications. Thanks. See you next time.